And then
Oh, honey, what did you make for dinner tonight?
we have our carrot.
Oh, I spent 4 hours on this carrot.
Beautiful.
Wow, and look at how
There we
beautiful
go.
mine turned out, too.
Well
I mean,
done.
it's almost...
In 1977, I met a French chef named Roland Hennin. Chef Hennin took me aside one day and he was explaining to me why cooks cook. Whether you were the short order cook down the street, or whether you were the private cook for a family, or whether you were a chef in one of the finest restaurants in the world. And he said to me, cooks cook to nurture people. And at that moment, that very moment, July 1977, is when I decided to become a professional chef. I'm Thomas Keller, and this is my masterclass.
Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. It's Lewis P here. Today what we're going to be talking about is the Thomas Keller Teaches Cooking Techniques Masterclass. We're going to look at each one of the 3 courses that he has available right now. We're going to look at Thomas Keller Masterclass 1, Masterclass 2, as well as Masterclass 3. So we're going to go into a lot of detail. We're going to jump into the lessons as though you just purchased it and actually show you around and see what you get so you can ultimately figure out if it's worth it for you. And as always, there's a link in the description which will get you the Masterclass for an unknown amount at this point in time. Masterclass is always changing the website, and they're also changing the deal or the price that's always happening. What does that mean? It means as of the recording of this video, they currently have a free trial, which is pretty interesting. I mean, that lasts for 24 hours, and during Christmas and all those different seasons, they have different promotions as well. And my link will give you the most up-to-date promotion at that point in time. However, they don't last long, so grab that if you want to. And what we're going to do immediately is we're going to log into each of the masterclasses and show you around the school, if you will. Then we're going to answer how much does it cost. We're going to look through everything. How does it work? We're going to look through the videos, and then we're going to look at each of Thomas Keller's masterclasses. We're going to look at Cooking Techniques 1, we're going to look at 2, as well as 3, and figure out if they're all worth it for you. And also, if you get the all access masterclass, you by default get all of them. So have fun with that. There is no single masterclass anymore, or at least at this point in time. They're really pushing people for the all access masterclass, which will get you all of these classes. But either way, what's important is you guys have requested it, and now I'm doing it. So here we go. And as a side note, everyone, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because I make a post on the community tab and I leave it up for about 3 or 4 hours that links to some of my free courses online. So you can take it. There's no pitch, there's no method. I'm not going to blast your emails or with anything like that. This is just a way to really get subscribers and really support you guys. So by all means, subscribe. Every week I'm going to be giving free courses, so take advantage of that. Just hit that subscribe button. So otherwise, let's jump into the masterclass right now. So let me show you a quick overview of how masterclass works really fast. This is going to take less than 30 seconds, and then we're going to jump into and log into the masterclass as though you've just invested in it. Of course, masterclass has their whole bunch of cooking classes by Gordon Ramsay and Aaron Franklin. I will have a few links up to them on the top right of your screen right now, so take advantage of that. Go check them out. Gordon Ramsay is an absolute monster. I thought Gordon Ramsay was actually better than Thomas Keller, but to be fair with you, I prefer Thomas Keller. But you know, don't tell my other viewers on my Gordon Ramsay review. Obviously, Alice Waters is still an absolute beast, and you'll see a link into that. These are the other classes masterclass works out. Of course, you have Alice Waters, Gordon Ramsay, Aaron Franklin, and you have a whole bunch of other A plays in that world. I have an Alice Waters versus Thomas Keller Masterclass review as well, which I think is the most valuable piece of content that I produced with respect to culinary arts. So that's going to be on the top right. Check that out. Alice Waters, very underrated, absolute monster, really, really good. They don't have the single masterclass at this point in time. They've actually removed it. So now they're focusing on a masterclass subscription, very similar to YouTube Premium or something to that effect, where you pay and then you get a subscription model to their service, which gives you all 85 classes. They're releasing a masterclass almost every month at this point in time. You can download it and watch it offline. Of course, there are PDF workbooks, which I'm about to show you, and you can watch it on any device. And yes, there it is. They've just announced it right now. New classes are coming every month. Otherwise, let's jump into the Thomas Keller Masterclass right now. So once you've invested in the masterclass, you've clicked my link in the description, and now you're here. This is going to give you a complete overview of all of the masterclasses you have access to. We have Thomas Keller 1, 2, and 3. What we're going to do now is take you through each one of them. This is going to be a long video, guys. Go grab a coffee, go grab a tea, pause this video if you need to. I'm going through every single one of Thomas Keller's masterclass for you. This is going to be the complete review for you. So let's jump into it. Now, before we jump into the lesson plan, which I'll have a little timestamp if you want to see that, I'm actually going to have a timestamp for each one of the lesson plans for you. So they're all going to be on your screen right now. So if you want to skip to any of them and look at the lesson plans, by all means, go for it. However, there are a lot of people that are new to masterclass that don't understand this interface. So I'm just going to give you an introduction to it just so you're comfortable once you jump in. Either way. Now, of course, if you want to start the masterclass for any of them, you just press the big red button and you're off to the races and it begins. Every single masterclass has two major things. Now, of course, the workbook, which gives you all the recipes and what he talks about. I'm actually going to download it now and show you what it looks like. I'm only going to show you this one because it's not really fair for the other people that invest. And this is what the masterclass workbook looks like for Thomas Keller. I'm not going to show you any more than this because that's not fair to those that invest. But if you want to pause the video and read this, go for it. It's only the first page, you know, more than reasonable. And yeah, by all means, go nuts. Once you've seen the workbook and you've reviewed it before you've taken the class, then you want to have a look at one more thing. Don't worry about search. Don't worry about categories. Don't worry about quick list or my classes. That's fine. What you really want to be looking at is this, the community. So the community has a few different components to it. There is the Thomas Keller MasterClass community, which is here, but also the overarching masterclass community. The point is there are contests, there's networking, and as well as student highlights. So let's hypothetically say Thomas Keller does a competition. You could potentially be featured in the student highlight as something that you create, and all of the other masterclass students will see that. There are networking events where you can communicate with other masterclass students and talk about different recipes you guys are building and all these things. And to be fair with you, this alone, in my opinion, is actually worth more than the actual lesson plan. The community is where you see other people, you engage with other people, and it's sort of like a little tribe, if you will. It's really, really cool. Either way, let's jump into the masterclass review. I'm going to be very brief because I have 3 of these full masterclasses to go through. I'm not going to split these up into 3 videos. That's not fair on you. I'll have a timestamp if you want it. This is the ultimate Thomas Keller masterclass review. We're going into it now. Of course, the first lesson, lesson 01, jumps right into the introduction, which is who is Thomas Keller? What are you all about? All of these things, which is great. Now, what I find really interesting immediately is they don't show you the comments down here. For every video, there are comments and there is engagement. And unfortunately, unlike the other masterclasses, they're not showing you the comment down there for some reason. I don't know why they removed that. It's an introduction, the equation of cooking, mastering techniques, and practice, practice, practice. Now what happens, because this is masterclass 1, the basics as well as vegetables, pasta, and eggs, this is going to go through the essentials of the kitchen. So the essential tools, knives, whisks, everything that you need to have, the essential ingredients, cookware, and there are 3 lessons just to kitchen setup. And then what he does is really gives you the foundations of sourcing ingredients, how to work with vegetables as a basic introduction. And then he goes into how do you actually work with vegetables. So glazing carrots, peeling tomatoes, very simple stuff. But remember, there are over 30 lessons in this masterclass. So don't feel like this is a bit too basic. It gets advanced at the end. But this again is the step-by-step process. If you want to become a chef, if you want to become an expert cook, this is where you start. And that's why they built 3 courses. Of course, there is an introduction to sourcing ingredients, an introduction to vegetables, asparagus, carrots, tomatoes, artichokes, potatoes, pickling, parsnips, eggplant and garlic, zucchini, beets. And then once all the vegetables are done, in lesson 17, he looks at the types of eggs. So for example, let me give you a quick example. Thomas Keller talks about multiple different things in this lesson alone. So for example, there are multiple ways to view an egg. So he looks at the different breeds of chicken that produce specific eggs. And he says, okay, well, where do you want to source these things? The chicken's diet. And this is the result of that diet. So it's pretty, I mean, I never thought eggs could be this intricate, but they are. He talks about how to immediately tell if an egg is old, whether you buy it from the store or from the farm, or if you're getting just completely ripped off, to be fair with you. And he looks at the signs that tells you if an egg is old or not. So for example, an old egg is very runny, and then a fresh egg that's like directly from the farm is very bouncy. So that's just a quick example of like 17. Then he goes into how do you utilize eggs? So of course, mayonnaise, hollandaise, how to look at custards and how to make them with these eggs, boiled eggs, scrambled eggs, poached eggs, omelets, and that is the egg component. And then of course, pastas. So of course, just like the eggs, there is a pasta introduction, and then he looks at the dough, he looks at certain recipes within that dough, and then he looks at all of the, you know, spaghetti, he looks at the different ways you build spaghetti, fettuccine, linguine, gnocchi, the 6 disciplines of success, and what's required to become a successful chef. And remember, if you don't know, Thomas Keller has some of the best restaurants on the planet, as good as, I would argue, Gordon Ramsay. And then the essential philosophies that are required in order to be amazing and run your restaurant successfully. So what are they? You know, cook to nurture people. Why do you cook to begin with? And he talks about the reason he cooks is because it nurtures people. He looks at true creation. So be aware, be inspired, and interpret and evolve. The law of diminishing returns, choosing words as you would ingredients. So the way you communicate to people is really important. Sayings to work by, stand on the shoulders of masters, and parting words. Now, this isn't really parting words because I don't think he knew he was going to do 2 other Goliath masterclasses as a result of this one, because people really like this. And there's a reason why they called him back 2 other times, right? And what I found really interesting about this particular masterclass is when he talks about evolving as a chef and finding new and interesting ways to cook. What I found found the most interesting was this. He doesn't really care too much about the innovation of cooking because his opinion is really, well, to be fair with you, everything already exists and there's no such thing as something new in the world of cooking. It's just whether or not someone finds it. So I never really thought about cooking in that context. So that was really interesting to see. So now we're going to jump into Thomas Keller's second masterclass. His second masterclass is all about meats, stocks, and sauces. Much more advanced. You don't need the basics anymore, which is wonderful. And you know exactly how this works. As a side note, the ticks on the right means you have completed the class, so you can track your progress. So if you get up to like 14, for example, it'll tell you whether or not you've completed it, and you can immediately start at 15 in this case. Thomas Keller's masterclass 2 starts off with a basic introduction. It's going to say, okay, this is who I am, but now I've returned and now I'm going to show you how this works. And he jumps right in. There's no kitchen fundamentals, there's no egg fundamentals or vegetables or anything like that. You need to have watched, and he says this multiple times. He goes, listen, if you haven't completed my original masterclass, go back and watch it. There is no additional cost to you at this point in time because it's all subscription based. So go watch this. If you haven't, then jump into this one. And the exact same thing happens to masterclass 3, whereby he says, if you haven't watched 2 and 1, don't watch this one. Go back and watch those ones. That applies to this one. If you haven't watched Thomas Keller's first masterclass, then don't watch this one. So let's jump into it. There's an introduction. Then there is getting started. The different quality, the types of meats. He looks at Wagyu. He looks at all of these types of meats with respect to aged meats. He looks at how the ribeye actually came about. And this is a very, very powerful lesson. Now, I would argue that this lesson is just as well communicated in the Gordon Ramsay masterclass, to be fair with you. So if you've taken the Gordon Ramsay masterclass, you would have already known this. However, in the Gordon Ramsay masterclass, there is no Wagyu, and he talks a bit more detail into the Wagyu beef and how that works and the origins of that type of cut, which is quite a cool story. Then he looks into chicken. He looks at cooking schnitzel. He looks at fried chicken, which, by the way, was by far my favorite lesson of the entire masterclasses. This was amazing, the way he cooked fried chicken. And now imagine having fried chicken built by one of the best chefs in the world. That is insane either way. Then he looks at techniques on how to roast. Now this applies to all types of meats. We're talking about like duck breast. We're talking about all of these different types, ribeye, different types of meats, Wagyu, everything on how to use the oven and actually when to use them, which is just as important. Looks at duck breast, you know, pan roasting, oven roasting. So we've gone away from fried chicken. Now we're looking at oven roasting chicken and the different ingredients on how to do that, which is cool. It looks quite nice. I'm going to have it on your screen right now. Then oven roasting, prime rib roast, techniques on slow cooking certain meats as well. Braising, which is quite cool. Looks at the pork shoulder and figuring out the best way to do it. Now, what's really nice and I think quite interesting is he talks about the history of these techniques. So it isn't just this is how you do it and it's boring. It is very much an engagement session, and it's very much long form content on this. Like for example, on braising a pork shoulder, you don't need 30 minutes to do that, but there's so much that goes into it. He talks about the history. He talks about so many different little things, which I think add to this masterclass, and it's pretty cool, to be fair with you. Either way, moving on. Then he looks at red wine braised short ribs. Now again, like 40 minutes on this one. You don't need 40 minutes to do this, to be fair with you. He could probably sum it up in about 10 minutes and you'll know how to do it. But again, it's about the engagement. It's about the history of the cook, and it's though you're right next to him. It's as though you're training alongside him. You can cook along with this masterclass, and there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And then one of my favorites of the second masterclass, which is grilling, of course, steak, lamb chops, and chicken, and how to properly grill. Also, if you really want to learn how to properly grill things, the Aaron Franklin masterclass, in my opinion, trumps this, but that is, of course, a barbecue masterclass and not really a chef one. But either way, moving on. Lesson 15 is all about stocks, broths. So in order for that to happen, he just talks to you about the fundamentals. Not too much on this one, to be fair with you, because it only goes for 8 minutes. However, because there's an overview, he goes into a little bit more detail in the next lessons. So he looks at roasted veal stock. He looks at light chicken stock, and that is a great overview on how that works. There is a good 45 plus minutes worth of content on just stocks, which is great. And to be fair with you, it's very hard to buy this type of stock at the store. Making it is just as valuable. So roasted veal stock, for example, 26 minutes on that alone. And of course, light chicken stock, 16 minutes on that alone. We're getting a good amount of time on stocks, which really the history talks about how it works. You're having a conversation with him at this point in time, and the community also love it. Then he looks at sauces. Now, again, it's an overview, and then he goes into the depth of it. So, you know, chicken brown, quick sauce. Then of course, he talks about vinaigrettes and different types of sauces, chow vinaigrettes, and all of these vinegars, and a whole bunch of other sauces, which are quite interesting. And again, 25 minutes on this one, 16 minutes on this one, and a good 40 minutes on the last one. And then there's the closing, which isn't really closing at all, because then after this, after meats, stocks, and sauces, you're going to jump into Masterclass 3, which I'm going to show you right now. Once you've gone ahead and you've completed Thomas Keller 1, done. You completed Thomas Keller 2. Now you want to complete Thomas Keller 3. So let's jump into that now. Now the Thomas Keller Masterclass Part 3 goes for 17 lessons again. Nothing like 32 because there's no foundational courses here. Remember, if you haven't done cooking lesson 1 and 2, you don't want to do this one. He jumps right into salmon, which is wonderful. He eats this 3 times a week, this particular dish. So now you're getting personal with him. Now he's talking to you about his life. And if you look at Thomas Keller for his age and, you know, everything about him, he's a very healthy human as far as I'm concerned. He demonstrates how to properly cut and fillet a king salmon and explains his techniques for cooking salmon mostly on the side. Now, this particular video is also in the Gordon Ramsay Masterclass. But again, if you want to see 2 different techniques on how to work with salmon, this is definitely something you want to check out. Again, it's about getting multiple different perspectives on things. So if you're going to get the All Access Masterclass, I would say go back to the Gordon Ramsay Masterclass because you're going to have access to it anyway, and have a look at how he works with salmon. And you're going to see some very interesting nuances there about how he works. And all of these little things add up, like, and you add them together, and then you become an amazing chef, right? You, in theory, become better than them because you're combining these 2 talents together and you're creating something even better. Either way, lesson 3 was interesting, but I'm not a fan of this type of fish, to be fair with you. And to be fair, I didn't watch all 23 minutes of this lesson. I wasn't a fan of it. I'm not a fan of that particular fish, to be fair with you. So lesson 4 is about pan roasting, so monkfish tail. So beginning with red wine sauce, Chef Keller shares his techniques for preparing a delicious monkfish tail, which is quite nice. I'm gonna have it on your screen right now. It looks beautiful. Lesson 5 is all about baking. So you can see now there are different types of cooking techniques that are used here. There's pan roasting, there's baking, there's oven roasting, there's boiling, which is quite interesting, that one, lobster boil. Then there's baking, salt baked branzino, which is quite cool. I actually really like that, but at the end result doesn't look too appetizing to me, but hey, that's just me. Then he talks about the butter poached lobster with macaroni and cheese. This may sound strange, and it's not macaroni, by the way, so relax. It's another type of thing that they cook. So this is his most famous dish at the French Laundry restaurant, and it's called the butter poached lobster with macaroni and cheese. Now, he shares his recipe on how to pull this off and teaches that technique on how to do it. Now, which is really weird to me because if you're this far into the Thomas Keller Masterclass, you're probably not a competitor. But if you are a competitor, I don't see why you can't use this in your own restaurant, to be fair with you. And that would be a very interesting thing, especially if you went and added some innovation to this dish, which would make your restaurant relatively unique as far as I'm concerned. And you could even promote that, which again, it's a Thomas Keller dish, but you're innovating. So this is a very powerful lesson. He spends a good 32 minutes on this, on how to cook it, everything. And it is a bit disturbing at times because they do cook a live lobster, which is going to be a bit weird for a lot of people. So for example, Gordon Ramsay kills the lobster before he cooks it, but Thomas Keller boils the thing alive, which is really strange, but it dies almost immediately. But still, it's a bit strange to me that he does that. And Thomas Keller explains the reasoning behind why he does it like that and why his restaurant and his peers do it like this, which is interesting. And then of course, oven roasting. So this is shrimp, how to do it properly. Lobster boil, what does that mean? And then he looks at something that's relatively advanced in my opinion, but this is Sous Vide cooking. Now I butchered that name, but that's me being an Australian, so hey, go on, mate. This is an introduction to that style of cooking. So he provides an overview of this type of cooking from both the packaging and preparation perspective, as well as the technique used. So he goes into how do you apply that method to asparagus and fennel. He looks at turbot, he looks at salmon, he looks at pots de creme, he looks at lemon tart with pine nut crust, and he looks at salmon. And then he gets to the fun part. Now he looks at desserts. We're looking at some of the most exotic French desserts as far as cooking is concerned. So we're looking at lemon tart with pine nut crust. We're looking at apple pie with lard crust. Now this isn't really exotic. This is very much a traditional American dessert that he's taken inspiration from his grandmother. So if you want the old style of cooking in your house, if you love that smell, traditional American cooking, this is definitely a lesson that's going to resonate with you. So, and really resonate with anyone that loves apple pie. So that's really cool. And then of course the conclusion. So eat up. Chef Keller includes the masterclass by showcasing techniques for slicing your desserts. Now what you find interesting is you don't just slice a dessert. You have to do something to your knife in order to slice the dessert properly. Otherwise you ruin it. So for example, what he does, I'm just going to give this one away. He blow torches his knife, and you see it in the flash, right? He blow torches it, and then once it's really hot, then he slices into his cakes and his desserts because it melts on the touch of the knife. knife. And that's really cool. Like, I've never thought about doing that. But you could also just put your knife on top of like a stove, obviously not touching a stove, but just warming it up before you slice. And they're the little nuances that add up, right? And that's just one little tip that he gives you. And then of course there's a bonus, and he uses short rib as an example. He demonstrates how cooking for different times and at different temperatures and more traditional preparations can lead to drastically different tastes and results. Now, again, a great bonus little video, just adding that additional lemon on the steak, right? And that's really it in a nutshell, everyone. That is all of Thomas Keller's masterclasses in a nutshell, 1, 2, and 3. And as always, there's a link in the description which you can get the masterclass for a price that is unknown to me right now. In Australia, it's $280, but in your region, it could be completely different for all access. So have fun with that. If I went into them in detail, this video would have been 2.5 hours long, and I don't want to do that to you. However, I hope I gave you a solid foundation of what they are. Of course, Thomas Keller 1, vegetables, pasta, eggs. Thomas Keller 2, meats, stocks, and sauces. And Thomas Keller 3 is seafood and desserts. So Thomas Keller's masterclass, is it worth it? Well, it really depends. Now, if you want to and are passionate about masterclass and cooking, and you want to actually become a chef, or you're an experienced chef, you know, it won't hurt to actually learn this stuff. However, if you're not very interested in spending this amount of time and learning the trade, and just in general, you don't want to take this seriously and you don't care too much about cooking, you probably don't want to get this masterclass and you don't want to get all access. Don't waste your time. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, as well as click that notification bell, because what I do once a week, I make a post on the community tab and I leave it up for 3 to 4 hours that links you to all of my free online courses. So you can take that all. There's no pitch, there's no method. I'm not trying to blast you with emails trying to sell you something. This is just my way to get subscribers by giving you guys some additional value. So by all means, if you want to click it, please click it. If you want to like it, I appreciate that a lot. And make sure to click that notification bell because you will be notified when I make those posts. So otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for watching the Thomas Keller Masterclass review video. I will see you in the next one. Louis P. out.